The Suzuki ALT50, also known as the Trail Buddy, was produced from late 1982 to 1984 only. It was continued on in a four-wheeled form as the Suzuki LT50 for a few more years after that, into the 90s. And essentially that LT50 is exactly the same bike from the handlebars back. Now these bikes were the smallest three-wheeler ever made, only had 6-inch wheels on them. They measured just over a metre long, roughly half a metre wide, and weighed a total of 41 kilograms, so tiny little bike. They used a 49cc air-cooled two-stroke engine using oil injection for the lubrication system. They were chain driven with a centrifugal clutch, used a pull starter to start them, and the throttle was controlled by a thumb controller on the handlebars, much like many other ATVs. So there you have it. That's a quick rundown on the Suzuki ALT50 Trail Buddy. Now this bike was released in the early 80s, so that means it came out during the peak of the three-wheeler craze around the world. You had Honda, Suzuki, Yamaha and Kawasaki all making three-wheeled bikes, from four-stroke farm bikes all the way to 250cc race bikes. They were super popular. Everyone wanted one, but unfortunately by the late 80s they were deemed too dangerous and most governments banned them from sale. So this then made the manufacturers transition purely to four-wheeler bikes for the ATV market. Basically what that means is anyone who owns an 80s three-wheeler, hang on to it because they're super rare, especially this little one because this was only made for 2.5 years. Normally that would make it pretty difficult to get parts for these, obviously because Suzuki don't make them anymore and you're limited to the second-hand market, but luckily because this bike does share most of its parts with the Suzuki LT50 that was made all the way up in through the 90s, I think even through the early 2000s, I'll have to double check that. Basically any part from the handlebars back is still available. All the mechanical parts, all the wheels, the tyres, the plastics, the seat, all still available. The only thing that I can't find for this bike is a front fender, and if I needed forks I wouldn't be able to find those either, but luckily those are in good shape. So I'm going to have to try and restore this original front fender the best I can, unless I can somehow come across one on eBay in the meantime. But yeah, like I said earlier in the video, if you know anyone who's got one, or if you know where I can get one, please let me know because I'd be very interested in buying a new one. So that brings us to what my plans are for this particular bike. Now, being my first motorbike and it's stayed in my family ever since, it's got a lot of sentimental value to me. So I never planned to sell it. Now that would normally mean that I would have no issue in modifying it because it's always going to be mine. I don't need to worry about values. However, I do understand how rare this bike is, so I'm not going to be doing anything to it that can't easily be reversed. It's essentially going to be a standard restoration with a few small changes. So first up, I'm going to put some taller handlebars on it so I can actually ride it, because with the standard handlebars, I just don't fit on it. You would have seen in the earlier video, it's quite funny, but super uncomfortable. My legs start to cramp up pretty much within the first few minutes of riding it, and it's very difficult to steer. So it's getting a taller set of handlebars. I'll bolt to the standard mount. So again, easily reversible. Standard bars will be able to be bolted back on without too many issues. I do want to make a little expansion pipe for it, little cone pipe. Mainly for looks. You're not going to get much horsepower out of these little 50cc engines, but I think it would be cool to have a little cone pipe on it. So I'll be making one of those, maybe using a KTM 50 Pro Circuit muffler, so it sounds cool as well. Air filter, I'll be removing the standard air box and putting a little pod filter on it, but again, that's easily reversible. The standard pipe can go back on, no problem. Standard air box can go back on, no problem. And apart from that, maybe just some slight color changes on the wheels. I don't really like the silver wheels. I'll either go black or chrome with those. Again, easily reversible. So essentially it's just going to be standard restoration, few bolt-on parts. If in the future I want to put it into a museum or have it on display somewhere, I can just return it to standard. And it's not, hopefully not going to upset too many purists out there because I haven't butchered a classic bike. So since I started filming this video, I've been online, I've found a lot of the parts that I already need. I've ordered them, they're on their way. I'm not going to tear this apart until they get here because I don't want this in pieces. I want to be able to get this done fairly quickly. So come back in a few weeks when the parts have come here. I'm going to get it torn down, stuff sent out to powder coat and paint. I'll be rebuilding the engine with a new piston, and then hopefully we can get it assembled again pretty quick. I want this to be a quick build. I don't want this to drag out forever. Luckily, because it is just a bolt-on and restoration, shouldn't be too bad. So make sure you subscribe if you want to follow along to this. I think this is going to be pretty cool. Definitely a bike I plan to keep forever, and it's definitely one I'll put a lot of care into the resto on it. So we'll see you on the next episode. Remember how cool SMP stickers were in the mid-90s? That's probably worth restoring on its own. Just restore the sticker.